Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after another win by the Winnipeg Jets over the Vegas Golden Knights. They sweep them on the season here, putting themselves in a really good spot. This is why it's important to take on those teams that you're, potentially chasing and sweep them, because the Jets have put themselves in a great spot. Now, they haven't passed them in the standings, but as I said on the last show, the Vegas Golden Knights, they are over. And, one of the questions that I'm going to bring Ken into the show and ask him when he does get in here, what were you thinking, Ken? Because I'll tell you right now, Ken Wiebe had the Vegas Golden Knights representing the West in the Stanley Cup final. I had the Colorado Avalanche representing in the Stanley Cup final. Now, I'm not saying that one or the other is going to make it, but boy, oh boy, seriously, I don't want to say I saw this coming with the Vegas Golden Knights, but I'm not going to not say I didn't see it coming. But you know who definitely didn't see it coming was Ken Wiebe, because Ken Wiebe thought they were going all the way. We're going to have to boo and jeer this man when he gets into the show, and I'm not going to stop you from doing it. If that's what you feel like you need to do, you can do that. But to the game, I think I'm kind of wasting a little bit of time with this rant on Ken, because I don't know that there's a lot to talk about in this game. People, if you've been watching this show, if you know me, and I think a lot of you know me, you know how I feel about that game. You know how I feel about the Jets' effort. You know how the fact that they came off Chicago and came up with another effort like this where they were outshot. I believe it was 17-4 in the first period. I don't like it. I don't like what I'm seeing from them as far as it comes to playing. But Conor Hillebuck, someone said it here. Al Broderick says, Conor Hillebuck, Bucky was a god tonight. He did. He went into god mode. As the time was rolling down on the clock, I saw someone near behind the net stand up and was doing the old bow over to him. Much deserved. I was half expecting Conor Hillebuck to show up into the press conference afterwards with like the lightning Raiden eyes. If anyone played Mortal Kombat back in the day or back in high school or whatever, I was expecting him to have one of those like rice collecting hats, a gi on, and like lightning eyes, and be shooting lightning bolts out of his hands. He was that high of a level tonight. Absolutely phenomenal. I don't know that there's much more of a story. I mean, we can talk about the fact that the Jets do seem to be able to, despite falling asleep, wake up their offense as of late. 23 goals in their last 5 games, I believe, is the stat. So the credit that you have to give them in a situation like this is, while they decided to sleep for the first, about 15 minutes of the game, 25 minutes, 35 minutes of the game. Yeah, I'm probably being too hard on them. Probably about the first 25 minutes of the game. When they do wake up, as of late, they are definitely able to put the puck in the back of the net. But there is nothing to be said about this tonight other than the fact that had the Golden Knights been a team that could score as of late, and they can't, that's the second straight shutout that they've faced. 3 of their top 5 scorers are out of the lineup. 2 of their best defenders are out of the lineup, and their top goaltender is out of the lineup. The Jets went into that game playing a team that was vulnerable, and rather than acting like they were going for their throat from the beginning, they acted like they wanted to play around with them. Lucky Conor Hillebuck showed up tonight. Phenomenal game. That's all I have to say about it. Let's bring Ken Wiebe in on this. He can give you his advice on the game, and maybe he can defend his Vegas Golden Knights pick to the Stanley Cup final. I wouldn't if I were him, but if he wants to stick by it, he can do that. But let's bring in Kenny anyway, see what he's got to say. Ken, I'm going to let you choose where we start on this. We can talk about the Jets. We can talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. I kind of feel like you need to redeem yourself after your early season pick, or maybe you don't feel you need to. Some pundits got it. Some pundits don't got it. That's just the way it works. But, where do you want to start? Clean the slate. You take it wherever you want to take it, Ken.
Yeah, I appreciate the early grenade. And would this be a great time to remind you that your Stanley Cup pick last year, the Colorado Avalanche, were up 2-0 on the Vegas Golden Knights, and you had started the parade route right through Vail and on your way to Denver, on the way to getting beaten 4 times in a row by the Vegas Golden Knights. In which round was it? Oh, the second round. I'm going to clarify this right away, Sean. I didn't say the Henderson Silver Knights were going to win the Stanley Cup. I picked the Vegas Golden Knights, who dressed a training camp preseason roster tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. So, no, Vegas is in some trouble. I mean, they can't score right now. This is not breaking news. This is what got them knocked out by the Dallas Stars. It's what got them knocked out by the Montreal Canadiens. And it's what has them falling below the playoff line on March 22nd, which is a bizarre turn of events. They are playing without most of their best players, but they've got some problems. I mean, they're going to have to get things turned around quickly. I mean, they're also missing Alec Martinez, Braden McNabb on the back end. Still, at the same time, they still put up 42 against the Jets, and the Jets were fortunate to win because of the performance of one player who helped the Jets find their footing before getting their way. But, hey, Vegas has got some problems. There's no doubt about that. They are in a bit of disarray, but they got a quarter of a season left, so we'll see what happens as this goes on.
Come on, they're done. And
okay, we'll check the receipts on that again, too.
Let's check the receipts. And while we're checking receipts, how dare you? How dare you try to dip into my past and humiliate me with my picks of the past? I noticed you went to last year, but you didn't go to the year before where I picked a final between the Dallas Stars and the Tampa Bay Lightning, with the Tampa Bay Lightning winning at the beginning of the season. How dare you?
Incredible performance.
You should be a politician. Because you only bring up the stuff that benefits you.
That's not true.
And you don't bring up the stuff that benefits your opponent. We're not opponents. We're just having
Sean,
a little bit of,
you also said the Montreal Canadiens would stumble this year, and I had that one wrong. I'm happy to cede the floor to you. I'm giving you the stick tap for that one. Neither one of us knew that they would be without Price or Weber.
I also said that Cole Caulfield would score 30 goals this year. Now that looks ridiculous, but
he's hot lately.
Pace that he's been on, like clearly,
it's
starting
20
more and more. And I don't want to be the guy to throw a guy under the bus, but it's starting to look like that team.
You already did. You threw me under the bus before the show started. What are you talking about? Wake up, Reynolds! Wake up!
I don't want to be the guy who throws a guy under the bus after I just finished throwing you under the bus. I've got only so many people to throw under the bus. I've got a quotient. I filled that quotient.
All right, turn the mic down a touch. You're cracking all over the place again.
But to go back to Dominic Ducharme, I mean, it sure is looking more and more like he was a freight train that ran over the hopes of the Montreal Canadiens this season. I've moved it down. Hopefully that's going to help us out here. What Marty St. Louis has done with a number of those players so far, it's looking pretty good. And it's starting to, clearly I was wrong when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and Cole Caulfield getting 30 goals. But there's extenuating circumstances, the same as what you're talking about with the Vegas Golden Knights. I kid, but I touched about it off the top of the show. I mean, here's a team. Ken, you hear about these stretches, but I can't remember the last time I watched a hockey team that was as snake-bitten as this Golden Knights team. They had 2 posts. They had a wide-open net, which was about as easy a goal as you get, that I don't know which player it was, but flew it over the net after Conor Hillebuck had given them a gift. I mean, it's an entirely different game, and maybe they get off the schneid if they bury that goal and start, making something happen. But that's a team that cannot score goals. And I'll tell you this, you think about the importance of missing a player like Mark Stone. You talk about the importance of the players who are left behind. Like Marchessault was there tonight. This is a former 30-goal scorer. Jack Eichel was there. This is a guy who a lot of people thought was going to give Connor McDavid a run for his money for a number of years as the best player in the NHL. Talking about Wild Bill is still in the lineup. This is a guy who had 40 goals at one point in his career. All those guys were there tonight. But I'll tell you this, you can sure see a guy like Mark Stone is missed like crazy. And I'm going to say it, that I've seen Jack Eichel play a number of times in my career. You can kind of see what it is that he does really well. But boy, oh boy, when you needed a guy who needed to take the puck to the net on a number of occasions tonight, he just seemed to be content to play in the softer areas of the ice and look for that pass on the inside. This is a big boy. This is a big, strong guy who had the puck around the net a number of times tonight and just didn't choose to take it there on a number of occasions, trying to pass that puck in from the outside. This team is, I'll say this, Ken, they are rudderless and they are leaderless. And the problem is, and I don't think Max Pacioretty is that guy, but a guy like Alec Martinez is really missed in that room right now. McNabb is missed, but Mark Stone, to me, is the heart and soul of that team. And it does not seem like they have a substitute part when he is out. They are lost. I'm calling it. That's the season on these guys, Ken. It is over. The Winnipeg Jets are going to pass them, or at least tie them in the standings, I believe, by Thursday. This is a two-horse race. It comes down to this. And I was going to say when I started the show, Ken, I'm starting to think, a couple shows back when I said to the audience, hey, if you believe the Winnipeg Jets are going to come back and get into the playoffs, take $100, take $10, take $1,000 and place it on them to make the playoffs right now. Because if you're right, you are going to make an absolute fortune. It is unbelievable what's happened here. I took a look at we go back to when they needed to hop over teams like San Jose, Anaheim, Vancouver, Vegas. Well, I'm not including Dallas in this, but between Vegas, who I think they're going to pass right away, Vancouver, who they just passed, Anaheim, who they passed and put in the rearview mirror, and San Jose, those teams, we talked about the Jets not only needing to play phenomenal hockey, but a number of teams needing to absolutely, completely fallen apart. Well, those four teams, Vegas, Vancouver, Anaheim, San Jose, have completely fallen apart. Their combined record is 13-21-6. That's a 400% winning percentage. I think there's only four teams in the league, entire league who have a record less than that. So these teams have fallen off the earth, but it all comes down to Dallas. And I was starting to think, is this Jets team a team of destiny? Because after they win that game there tonight, and Conor Hillebuck steps out on the ice and celebrates, his first star of the game with that great celebration. I love it when he does the, tossing, casting the rod, hooking the fish. I love that. In that time, the Dallas Stars were up 2-1 in their game and gave up 2 goals in 40 seconds. Oilers are up 3-2. If you're seeing the clock tick down, I'm thinking there is nothing that is not going right for the Winnipeg Jets as of late. Then the Dallas Stars pull out 2 goals in 16 seconds? It was 24 seconds. 2 goals in 24 seconds with about 6 minutes left to take the lead, win that game by a 5-3 score. This is the tricky part, right? As nice a night as this was, as nice as it was for the Jets not to show up, but their goaltender to steal a game for them. You've got the Dallas Stars who go out, throw a little bit of a fly in the ointment. They remain 3 points up. They move into that last spot in the Western Conference Final. They have 2 games in hand on the Winnipeg Jets, and I know they play the Carolina Hurricanes next. But boy, oh boy, I took a look. Their schedule is not the most difficult of schedules down the stretch. They got a lot of their tough games out of the way early against teams like Colorado. They were one of those teams who did an early trip to Florida and Carolina, so they didn't fare very well on those trips, and I remember that kind of put them in a bit of a hole to start the season. But it's, again, the Jets, as good as this feels, as good as they have been, there's a lot of ground to make up here against a team that doesn't have the toughest of schedules, and a team that they have no games left against to try and make up that time. So the Jets just have to keep winning. It's as simple as that, Ken.
Some tremendous wrestling references in here for the folks who know we loved wrestling.
Oh,
there's some beauties. There's RKO's. There's Brutus the Barber references. Just tremendous. Keep them coming. That's just fantastic stuff.
Will, you got to get these things right. I didn't throw Kenny through a barbershop window. If you're going to do the Sean versus Marty Jannetty reference. It's the sweet chin music through the
There
window.
you go. Yes,
Get
yes.
it right,
There you
Will.
go.
If
There
you're gonna
you
bring
go.
up the old school, you got to go full old school. That's how it gets. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't be careful, I'm going to hit you with the honky tonk guitar over the head on the next one.
Oh boy, that would be great. And give me the old shake, rattle, and roll.
Yeah,
too,
you got that right. You got that right.
I love it. That's going to be some off-season content. We'll do like a backyard rink, and we'll have a Kenny and Renny wrestling match. It'll be
incredible.
Great. Let's get into it.
Hang on a second. Give the people what they want. Get the headband on early here. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Let's get this out of the way. Not out of the way. Let's do it. It's been a while.
Give Doug your music. Doug's ready for your music.
Bring it in. Let's bring it in. Kenny, I was telling you the other day, a buddy of mine texted me and said he was heading to work in the morning and he couldn't stop singing your theme music on the way in. And I just think it's like time and time again, I cannot believe the job done on the music. Tristan Rivers, phenomenal. I mean, I love that song. I think I told you this. Like, I used to hop on the trampoline in the backyard with the kids and just play that song over and over again. And they just loved it. And your song is absolutely perfect. Best entry music in the business. Hammy's was another absolute. And I love that they're all 80s kind of references because we've, had our time in the 80s. We probably peaked in the 80s, Kenny. Let's be honest with ourselves. That's as good as it got for us. But I love that they're
early 90s for me. Maybe the 80s for you, buddy.
Yeah,
early
90s. I think
early
once
90s.
I hit puberty, it all kind of fell apart for me. It's all been downhill from there. It was, when I was like 7, 8, that's as good as it got, right? I've gone downhill since then. Anyway, just love his stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. So hey, let's get into it. Tell me what you saw. I described it. Conor Hillebuck, I think, is that tonight anyways, was back to big and boring. Is that what you saw from him?
He was fantastic. Vezina-like. I mean, vintage Hellebuyck, you said on their post-game hit, and it was accurate, 100% accurate. The first 9 shots, was it 9? 9-0 out of the gate? It might have even been more, to be perfectly honest. I thought that Hellebuyck was very calm and composed early. He was very quiet in his crease. Not a lot of, very economical in his movements. And like you said, big and boring was back. I thought his anticipation was excellent. Sure, a couple pucks off the iron, yes. Chandler Stevenson, one-timer. Rattled another one off the bar on a one-timer. I mean, he was excellent. There's no way the Jets get the 2 points without Conor Hillebuck. But then what we saw was also sort of, as you touched on off air, vintage Jets. They found a way to get their offense rolling. I mean, where do you start? I mean, here's a good one here. We'll talk about Hellebuyck plenty, but what we saw earlier on, someone said, what about Kyle Connor? Should we be talking, not as the front runner, but should we be talking about Kyle Connor as a potential Hart Trophy candidate, like top 5 kind of guy, or no? What do you think about that?
If you're talking about,
if you want to say no,
goals, you're talking.
Sorry, Jets MVP. Sorry,
Austin Matthews. Yeah, Jets MVP in a walk.
Okay.
In a walk, like it's not even close. But you're talking to a guy who thinks that the Austin Matthews hype for Hart is ridiculous.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I don't buy into that. I think
really?
There's, go.
No, go ahead. It's good. I just said really. I want you to continue.
Well, I take a look at this, and I know those guys are scoring goals, and I feel like they're being overvalued. But the players up there, guys like, Jonathan Huberdeau, and I'm a guy who's probably, I'm going to admittedly say I skew towards points, right? But when the guys put the kind of audacious points up that they're putting up, it's something else, right? And then if you want to go and talk about what certain players mean for their team, is there anyone that is more impressive than that defenseman in Nashville right now and what he's doing and the amount of points that he's putting up in the games that he's putting up? I mean, I don't think he's. I haven't taken a look at their points, but does he have more points than Kyle Connor, or where is he in? Where's Roman Josi in comparison to the amount of points that Kyle Connor has? Right. The one thing I will say about this is one of the stats that I love when it comes to Kyle Connor is the fact that it's a duke out between him and Austin Matthews in leading the league in the amount of games that he's scored in. So this isn't, Patrick Laine going out and scoring 5 goals in a night like he did in the season back. And this isn't Patrick Laine cramming a whole bunch of goals into, 1 month. This is Kyle Connor showing up night in and night out, as he did tonight, right? Like setting up 2 really, really nice goals. His passing was on display tonight. He didn't need to show off the goals, but I am a big believer in this. Like people fall in love with their own guys, and you'll notice that every market seems to have, if you go and you take a look at all the votes for Hart Trophy, you'll see this market had a guy who's clearly really good for his team, and the argument is going to be he's more important to his team than this guy is. I am, and I'm going to go on this rant quickly. I'm going to try and keep it close. We are old enough to know that the younger generation doesn't realize how good Wayne Gretzky was, right? Because you get guys who come up to you and say it's the same kind of like the LeBron versus Jordan thing. I've seen both play. I don't think LeBron is anywhere near Jordan, and people who haven't seen Jordan can't comprehend how good he was. Wayne Gretzky was leap years beyond anyone else on the ice when he was playing. And so what happens is numbers matter and trophies matter. And what trophies matter most for is that they are basically, that's the museum. The trophies go up in the museum and tell you what was happening during the game at that time. And Connor McDavid, in my opinion, has been robbed of some trophies while he's been the best player in the game. And trophies matter because 30 years from now, when a kid hasn't seen Connor McDavid play, he's going to look back similar to, I believe, Sidney Crosby has been jobbed throughout his career. He's only won a couple Hart trophies here or there. So kids are going to look back and they're going to see he won a Hart trophy here or there. And it's like, yeah, well, was he that good? But if you take a look at a guy like Wayne Gretzky, what did he win? 9 straight Hart trophies? That's accurate. Those 9 trophies represent the domination that Wayne Gretzky had throughout his time in that league, right? Are you going to tell me right now that this is the answer I need to that question? With the numbers that he's putting up, with where his team is in the standings compared, are you going to tell me that Kyle Connor is a better player, is more deserving of the MVP, of the best player in this league? And do you put him ahead of Connor McDavid? Because I don't think that that's an argument that, I mean, if you're making that argument, I'm calling you a homer.
I'm not. That's not what I said. I said he was on the periphery. But listen, so
I haven't looked at the chat room, but I'm going to look at the chat room.
Top 10, maybe.
A bunch of people who are going to say that. But that's a homer argument if you're telling me that. If you're telling me that this year Kyle Connor is a better player, you're not. But for those of you out there, they will be there. And there's probably some in the chat room. If you're telling me that Connor McDavid is not a better player than Kyle Connor is, I'm going to tell you you're a homer, that you've been watching him play and that you've fallen in love with how he plays and that you're not recognizing what's happening around the league. Because no, I don't think that, listen, you said this in the beginning. Top 5, okay, I've got time for that.
Maybe 10, maybe 10. He might be in the top 10.
If you're trying to tell me he should be top 3 in the league and he should be in there
that's not
right
what I
now,
said.
I'm going to tell you, you're not, I know, let's make it clear. I'm not saying you said that, but there's people out there who are going to make that argument. If you're going to be making that argument, my guess is you've got 7 Jets jerseys up on the wall in your basement and you watch every single Jets game, and that you're a homer on that position.
Okay, let's get back to Ehlers. No, I appreciate where we're going here, but I think we're straying a little bit, and the folks want to hear. Let's talk a little bit more about the Jets. We talked about Nikolai Ehlers after the game here, Sean. What stood out most to you about this 10-game stretch for Nikolai Ehlers since he's been back in the lineup? I think the numbers are 6 goals, 11 points, and points in 9 of 10 games.
For Ehlers. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Carter Brooks for Game On magazine. I remember when Nick Ehlers came back into the lineup and was starting to play again. Carter Brooks put out a tweet that said, "This here is," and I'm gonna. It was along the lines of, if the Jets have any hopes of making the playoffs, it's with this man right here. And I remember I thought, geez, Carter, that's hyperbole, right? Like, that's too much. Conor Hillebuck could wake up and lead them. Mark Scheifele could turn around and start playing, a better game than he's been playing. Pierre-Luc Dubois could continue doing what he's doing. Svechnikov could wake up. Adam Lowry can do the things that he's done. I mean, Nick Ehlers is not the sole factor that is going to get the Winnipeg Jets into the playoffs. But I'm starting to think he wasn't that far off, because what he's added to this team, I think, is a massive difference. And what I love about it is he came onto the third line and was phenomenal. He went to the second line, and you know me, I've been advocating for the entire season, Svechnikov does not need to be taken off that line. I thought tonight was another example, although his goal was disallowed. I thought that was another example of him working really well with that line. But I'm going to say this right now, I don't think that line is anywhere near as good with Svechnikov on it as Ehlers on it. But then tonight, when you take Ehlers, I thought that Ehlers brought out a side of Mark Scheifele tonight that was one of the better sides of Mark Scheifele's game. And so I do believe this to me says everything. The fact that Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor's game, I think, got even better with Ehlers on their line, tells you that Ehlers is a player who's making the players around him better. I thought he did that on the third line. I thought he did it on the second line. I thought he did it on the first line tonight. Nick Ehlers, who I talked about last season, and I believe you did as well, I thought last year he was the Jets' best player, is back to looking like that difference maker, that if you let him run wild, and if a player like that gets into the playoffs, he may be the difference maker that's putting you over the top. So I have to apologize to Carter Brooks for thinking that it was hyperbole and that he put it over the top. It's still a smidgen over the top, I believe, what he said, but it's not as far over the top as what I originally thought.
Yeah, he was excellent. He's driving play, right? That's the biggest thing. And we know that in brief stretches, Ehlers has been able to shine with Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. We know that Blake and Mark prefer to play with more of a straight line player, a guy like Kyle Connor, who goes up and down the wall and uses that speed. Nikolai Ehlers with the east-west stretch of his game. But I thought he was really good tonight. He drove, he can create some lanes for those guys. Ehlers, that was just an exceptional pass by Scheifele, and wow, what a one-handed redirection by Nikolai Ehlers. That was just dynamite play. That play started with another one-man zone entry. Nikolai Ehlers special, gets it to Scheifele, drives the net, and just a brilliant pass there. Really good job on that front. The Jets got some puck luck. There's no doubt about that. The pass that Wheeler gave Dubois was a crispy sizzler in the feet. He got his stick on. Yeah, he got his skate. Redirect towards the net, goes to the net, and fishes it home. But trying to make something happen. So did a nice job there. I thought Scheifele was better tonight. I know we've been critical at times of his game. I liked his game today. I thought he was involved. I liked that line a lot. Wheeler had 2 assists, Ehlers 1-1, Scheifele 1-1. That was a night where both of the top two lines were rolling. And you talked about Kyle Connor. I'm just going to pivot back to Connor briefly. I don't think people realize how good that pass was on 4-on-4 to Neil Pionk for the one-timer. That was a big insurance marker. Connor just calmly, assessed where things were on the ice, and it wasn't a full no look, but he made an excellent pass cross ice to Neil Pionk, who hadn't scored in a while. That's a big goal for Neil Pionk. There have been times where it was a bit of a challenge for him this year. We've talked about it. Important goal for him. And man, impressive job by a lot of the key cogs for the Jets. And let's talk about the newcomers. What were your early thoughts on the return of Mason Appleton and the debut with the Jets for Zach Sanford?
Well, before we do that, I noticed T. Will was talking trash about me talking about Gretzky and it affecting our head count. I don't know where our numbers were before, and boy, oh boy, if people can't handle a little bit of Gretzky talk, I don't know what's happened to the hockey world. But What I would like to do is, while our head count is high, thank our sponsors, the Johnson Group, who've been absolutely phenomenal for us. We're so happy to have them on board. Johnson Group is a Winnipeg-owned and operated company that provides employee benefit solutions to companies from 1 employee to 10,000 or more. Over 30,000 Canadian businesses trust Johnson Group with their employee benefit needs through various products, including the Chambers Plan, Maximum Benefit, and CINUP. Johnson Group is a platinum member of Canada's best managed companies and named one of Manitoba's top employers. Whether you are a sole proprietor, part of a large organization, or an association with thousands of employees, Johnson Group has an employee benefits solution for you. And if they're as good at their job as they are good guys, Kenny, they're phenomenal at their job. And that's all I've ever heard about them, is how good of service they provide. But absolutely great people that I can't wait to spend more time with. Back to the third line that you wanted to talk about.
Yes, sir.
I'll say this: Mason Appleton to me didn't look like the Mason Appleton of old. I'm not panicking. I'm not trying to punch down on a situation like this. I think he just came from, he's still a young player, came from playing a different system, came back to playing a system that, you know, you're asking and you're saying, okay, he should fit right back in. Well, it's not like he's playing with Andrew Kopp and Adam Lowry, who he's used to playing with. He's playing with Stastny, who I'm sure he's played a little bit with, and he's playing with a player that he's never played with before. So I do think that, you know, there's plenty of room to grow. That third line, if it's going to get to what Kevin Cheveldayoff wants it to be, it's supposed to be big and bruising and heavy. Zach Sanford, you can see what it is about Kevin Cheveldayoff, that he expects that from him. There are some times tonight where I saw him get that puck, and he's got a real calmness to his game that, you know, I was a little surprised to see, Ken, because the last time I really watched a lot of Zach Sanford was back when they were winning the Stanley Cup. He was a really young player at the time. So there's a poise to his game that I don't remember seeing, but I do remember seeing him. I remember looking up his stats and being impressed with him as a younger player, thinking he had, you know, a lot of growing to do. We've seen a lot of that growing. He's a big guy, knows how to protect the puck. So you can see him being one of those guys that, if the third line, especially with Adam Lowry out there, is able to get the puck down low in the zone. If he gets a hold of it, it's not going to be easy to get away from him, get that puck away from him. He's going to be able to create some zone time. You know, I can't see that there's going to be any kind of difference in Mason Appleton's game, especially once we get Adam Lowry back in here. So do I think it's achievable what Kevin Cheveldayoff is talking about, as far as that being a big, heavy, tough line to play against? I do. I think they're trying to get that line back to being what they were last year, which was a line they didn't mind. You know, the Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid come into town. Sure, we're going to put Adam Lowry up against you. We're confident to do that, and we're going to see if that can open up space for our second and third lines. If you take a look at what was happening with the Jets last year, Pierre-Luc Dubois not being able to play the game that he's playing right now, imagine what that line would look like against third lines this season. I mean, you have to be salivating at that if they're able to pull that off. The one thing I would say is, I know that Mason Appleton had a really good season last year as far as providing offense. I know Adam Lowry is doing phenomenal this year, especially when it comes to the penalty kill. But I do wonder how much Andrew Kopp was the straw that stirred the drink on that line in seasons past. I wonder about Mason Appleton's ability to contribute offensively, and maybe even Adam Lowry's ability to contribute offensively without Andrew Kopp on that line. Zach Sanford, while I see you know, the big man that he is, his ability to hold on to that puck, I don't think I've ever seen from him anywhere near kind of the, you know, the defensive acumen and the offensive acumen that we saw from Andrew Kopp. So there's going to need to be a lot of figuring that line out before I'm entirely sold on it. But all in all, I don't think it was the greatest night for that line, but it wasn't the great night for any of the Jets up front, other than when they were opportunistic and put the puck in the net. This is a game that is entirely won by Helly, so I'm going to need to see more examples of them play and play better in order for me to make a full decision on that. What did you see?
Yeah, no doubt. I saw speed from Mason Appleton. His speed game is going to help the Jets. He has that willingness to go to the net. I mean, again, people don't want excuses, but this is a reason. I mean, guy flew 4.5 hours across the country here, so I mean, no, exactly.
That's what I just said. Anyway, go on.
Right. So that's what I mean. I think based on that, I didn't mind his game. I mean, I think the puck bounced around a lot. I think there were scoring chances that could have turned into real chances. One bobbled over his stick, one was wobbling. I liked his skating. I liked Zach Sanford's game. He played a bruising style, got involved physically. I thought Paul Stastny looked great, especially defensively in that role. We know it's only part-time until Adam Lowry is back from COVID, which we expect to come on Friday, but I like the potential for that line. You're right. I mean, you didn't see it all unfold into being a dominant line, but you could see the things that would make them successful. It sort of reminds me of when Brandon Tanev was the third guy on that line, but we'll see how it rolls and how it unfolds. But a few things that you would like if you're Dave Lowry, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, room for improvement, absolutely. But based on probably the shock of being moved and getting across the country, and Zach Sanford even telling us this morning, it got to be around 10-2, and he was starting to think that, well, maybe I'm staying, right? I mean, that's got to be a weird feeling for a guy who was expecting to be moved, and then you don't see your name in anything, and then all of a sudden, a little bit later, you're finding out you are on the move again. So, interesting connection. I mean, Kevin Hayes is a guy who played in college with Zach Sanford. I think they spent a lot of time together. You would have got a scouting report of the city and the organization, and both guys sounded excited to be here. I mean, Mason Appleton never wanted to leave. We know that. Now this is an opportunity for him to spend at least this year and next year, and if he wants to sign an extension, I mean, we'll see what happens on that front. But Appleton getting involved in the penalty kill right away, I liked what I saw from him there. Otherwise, we'll see what happens on Thursday. I think interesting situation for Sanford, right? You got to play your old team. I mean, it's only 1 year there, but you're playing your old team in your second game, so interesting times all around. But I actually like Stastny a lot in the middle. He had his smarts on display as usual. Well, his D zone was excellent. He was below the puck a ton, and did a really nice job there.
I'm interested in this was asked. I forget who asked it. I think it was Marshall. But I had some texts coming my way about this question as well. I think there's a real appetite for a lot of people in the Jets, fandom to see Stastny down the middle, to turn it into a Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny, Lowry kind of setup. What's your take on that, and what do you think the likelihood of that is?
Yeah, 0% is the likelihood. Adam Lowry's not a fourth-line player. I know a lot of people have different opinions on that. The Jets signed Adam Lowry to a deal that's over $3 million because they want him to be the third-line center. Sean, we had Elliot Friedman on our special edition with Adam Lowry, and Elliot basically said to us, he said, "This isn't true. Is it? Tell me this isn't true. The Jets didn't get this done because they were in on Adam Lowry and not to be their fourth-line center. He has double digits in goals in 5 of 7 seasons. Not a ton of fourth-line guys that I'm familiar with have produced at that rate. So, would the Jets be even deeper? Perhaps, but Adam Lowry is playing some of the best hockey of his season. 6 goals in 11 games. I mean, there's no need for him. I mean, I could understand the argument if you had said in the first half of the season, when Adam Lowry was struggling to get offense going and had 3 goals, that you might have considered moving him there on a short-term basis, and even then I wouldn't have done it. Adam Lowry's a third-line player. He doesn't have to be a fourth-line player in any situation, and Paul Stastny's so versatile, you can play him on the wing. So I don't think it's going to be it's got a basically 0% chance of happening when Lowry's healthy, but he did a nice job of filling in today. Sean, the bigger question for me, is it Paul Stastny or Yevgeny Svechnikov on the second line with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor? That's the question for me.
Oh, interesting. And see, I don't think it's going to be either. I think that Stastny is going to go back up to that first line. I think they like maybe what they see from that veteran line. I think Ehlers will go back down. And I think Svechnikov is going to drop all the way to the fourth line. Because here's the deal. I do think, Ken, that there's the assets to turn it into a full 4-line team that could have like 4 really dangerous lines. I just don't see the Jets doing that. The way they like to put the ice time for their first and second lines, there's just simply not going to be enough ice time for a fourth line that would be play a significant role. So what I see them doing is stacking and giving the best possible. Now, here, maybe, just maybe, I think we have an idea that, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler get a say in who gets to play with them, right? And I'm not saying that they say it and it's done, but what I am saying is if Nick Ehlers goes up on this line and they're absolutely tearing it up, and Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler go to Dave Wheeler and say, sorry, not Dave Wheeler, Coach Wheeler, and say, we want this guy to stay on our line. I could see that happening. It's a possibility, and especially because of where Svechnikov is. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see the plan for Kevin Cheveldayoff was to keep Paul Stastny and put him on the fourth line. I believe it's you who said that to me earlier on today, right? Like this was not the intention. They took a look at a player that they thought was doing really, really good on the first line, and has kind of rejuvenated that top line with his intelligence and his defensive play. And so that's where I basically see him landing. I wanted to ask one more, Ken, before we get in. Okay, do your thing.
Sorry, just a quick one. Just the other thing, I think you can do both, right? I mean, we also know that Stastny has some chemistry with Pierre-Luc Dubois as well. So I think you don't have to be married to the top six. You can move some things around there and have some fluency there, and get the blender out at times. I just think that Stastny's so versatile, you can move him up and down the lineup.
I wanted to ask you this because I found this interesting. My thoughts on the truth serum behind the podium. Dave Lowry had said, I'm just realizing I'd said Dave Wheeler and Coach Wheeler and all that kind of stuff. Dave Lowry said behind the mic that he's not going to beat up on a win after today. When he was asked about it, the kind of idea, and I think he did acknowledge that the Jets didn't have their best, but the line that he used is he's not going to beat up on a win. What I saw from, you know how I feel about this, and it seems to, one of the things I dislike about the Jets when they get going and playing hockey like this is they kind of seem to celebrate wins like this rather than acknowledge that this isn't the way you win hockey games. This isn't the way that you go into the playoffs. This is not a sustainable blueprint to go out and get outshot by almost double, to get absolutely worked at the start of the game by a team, but win a game because your goaltender just puts up a brick wall. What I heard from Pierre-Luc Dubois and Conor Hillebuck was an acknowledgement to that. Like, this was not our best night. This is not the way you play. We need to be better than that. That's what I heard. I wanted to get your take on the Jets' response to this game in their post-game comments.
Yeah, I think they were accurate. I mean, Dave Lowry said it himself. I mean, I wasn't even asking him to criticize. I asked him how they played with the lead, and he still thought it was. I'm not going to criticize a win, and I wasn't asking him to. I actually thought the Jets played better when they went up 2-0. They didn't sit back and get hemmed in and pounded in the shot clock. So I actually thought they picked it up as the game kind of went on. Again, I mean, it's a great assessment, right? I mean, the Jets know that. I mean, they know that they can count on Hellebuyck every once in a while, and they got that kind of performance. But I love the fact that Hellebuyck was. To me, Sean, I don't know what you thought, but I'm going to ask you. To me, I saw that little gleam in Conor Hellebuck's eyes again. A much different demeanor than the guy that we heard praising Igor Shesterkin and saying, "Man, must be nice to play on a team like that." Conor Hillebuck sounded like a guy who was pretty happy. He was not only dialed in, but he looked like a guy who wants the net, down the stretch here and thinks that he can be a difference maker. And he's 100% right. I mean, you can't ask him to make 42 stops every game, but that was an absolutely awesome performance by Conor Hillebuck. And the Jets are going to need a few more of those down the stretch, no matter what.
Well, I'll say this about, there hasn't been a ton of times this year. There's been a couple, but there hasn't been a ton of times this year that Conor Hillebuck has outright won the Jets a game. That happened here tonight. I think the expectation has been for a number of years that Conor Hillebuck is going to earn you, 8, 10, 12, 14 points in a year just by his play alone. So I don't think we can say, that's been the case this year with the Winnipeg Jets, that they're where they are because Conor Hillebuck has been winning them games, but you could probably say they are where they are because Conor Hillebuck hasn't been winning them games. So regardless, I know what you're saying about the gleam in the eye thing. Like this was Conor Hillebuck getting that old feeling back, that feeling of going back into a dressing room and looking around at his teammates and being like, yeah, I got you this one, right? And probably, a number of the players, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois said it when he was asked about how he performed in that game. There was an acknowledgement tonight, a full and complete acknowledgement. It wasn't one of these, hey, we stayed in the fight. Hey, I thought we took that game over. It wasn't any of those things where, the team was patting itself on the back for its performance and saying, oh, yeah, and by the way, we've got the best goalie in the league. Tonight, that was a response that was, we had the best player on the ice tonight, far and away, was Conor Hillebuck. Everybody else was down here, and that's why we're up here talking about a win, not talking about a loss. And yeah, go on.
Sorry.
Go
I'll
on.
Finish. Best part of that exchange was Pierre-Luc Dubois' early fake shot. You mean Kyle Connor? Incredible.
Yeah.
We talk about his engagement level. Like, that's a guy comfortable in becoming part of the leadership group, right? I mean, when you're a new guy, you're not making a joke like that. It was funny. Everyone knew. He knew I meant Conor Hillebuck, but he also wanted to give him a little bit of grief, which I loved it.
Of course. Hey, I wanted to address this point. EKD says it was a weird game. Hellebuyck stole the game, but also got run support from the team as well. And listen, we should acknowledge that the Jets did that they gave them the run support. It ends up being a 4-0 win, right? I'll say this. There's a number of times throughout that game, like, and I turned to Joey Slattery from CTV during the game, and I don't know if you saw my tweet, Ken, but in the first period, I'd said, okay, the Jets are getting roundly outshot. Get ready for them to take a 2-0 lead in this game, because that's so the Winnipeg Jets, right? Sitting, getting absolutely worked, and they turn around and pop a couple. So I'll give the Jets credit for this. The run support that we're talking about, the most important goals, I think, are those first two goals. The Scheifele goal, to me, is the really, really important goal, because at that moment, I saw a very kind of broken Golden Knights team. I saw them sag after that. The game wasn't the same after that. But the other thing that happened at that point is that team had to up their risk profile. And I'll say this about the Winnipeg Jets. When the other team ups their risk profile, the Jets typically feast on teams like that. So while we want to say, hey, you know what, if Connor wasn't on tonight, maybe they would have won 4-1 or 4-2 or something like that, those later goals end up happening. I mean, if you take a look at the goal that Kyle Connor sets up Neil Pionk on, that is a complete and total breakdown by a team that's trying to take chances to cut the ice in half to steal the puck and go down ice. That's a team taking chances to get back into the game. Those goals happen because the risk profile has to be raised for the Golden Knights at that stage. So I don't necessarily think that, if Hellebuyck wasn't there, it was going to be a 4-3 game tonight. It wasn't going to be easy for the Jets to score if they didn't get those early goals. But also, if Conor Hillebuck had allowed 2 more goals, if it's a 2-2 game, those last 2 goals don't happen, because the risk profile of the Golden Knights is not allowing goals like that to happen. So I think there's a distinction. Yeah, the Jets ended up with 4 goals, and yes, the Jets know how to pour it on once the risk profile goes up, and that's important. But if Conor Hillebuck is allowing 1, 2, 3 goals earlier on in that game, I don't think it looks like a 4-3 victory. I think it looks like a Golden Knights team that is emboldened, really shutting things down and making it very hard for the Jets to score. And it's more likely they end up with about 2 goals in that game. So I wanted to take it in that direction. Let's get to, because we only have about 12 minutes left, we haven't broken down what we thought of Kevin Cheveldayoff's trade deadline. Open chalkboard, write down your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously the debate was always, I mean, again, and I think that you kind of had this more than I thought the Jets were going to move both. One of the biggest, developments in the entire press conference, it lasted 25 minutes or so. Kevin Cheveldayoff saying not only did he not get close to trading Paul Stastny, he had no intention of trading Paul Stastny, and shut down pretty much any conversation, people doing their due diligence, asking if he might be available. And to me, just to clarify, I'm not saying the Jets should have traded Paul Stastny, but I thought that their commitment was going to be for the retooling on the fly. So that's why I thought, they would move all of their UFAs. And Sean, I think you agree with me. I mean, Dave Lowry this morning made it sound like Paul Stastny would be an option to return. We were sort of under the assumption that Paul Stastny was, if he was going to play next year, was probably going to play somewhere else in the States. To me, that certainly left out, he said that wasn't the case with Paul leaving, meaning that he left the door open for a potential return. So for me,
before you move on from that, I want to weigh in on that before you move
please
on
do.
from that specific topic. So I was thinking this the other day. If I have the full expectation that, and that's why I thought it wouldn't have been the biggest deal if they would have moved him, because I thought Paul Stastny was going to come back regardless. And one of the reasons I think why is, like, this is a guy who advocated for Nate Schmidt to come down. This is a guy who sold people who were going to be in Winnipeg, because of their contracts, for the possibility of like 3 to 4 years, right? So he is telling people, I think that you should take your life, uproot it, and move to Winnipeg and be part of this team for years to come. And I thought this, if Paul Stastny signed for 1 year and then had an opportunity to sign back here and did take off and went and played for Colorado or something like that, wouldn't you, if you were Nate Schmidt or Brendan Dillon, be like, what's up with that? Like, you convinced me to come here and then you take off. My impression on this is Paul Stastny has decided this is where he's going to end his career. He's doing 1 year deals so he can give Kevin Cheveldayoff the flexibility to fit his contract in with whatever else works with the players that he needs to bring in. And I'll be honest, if that wasn't the case, I would be a little bit pissed if I were those other players, that a player who had no intention of sticking around beyond this year convinced me to stick around here for 3 to 4 years. That to me would be a faux pas on the part of Paul Stastny. So when Dave Lowry said that today, to me it was confirmation of what I felt I already knew. Paul Stastny has a handshake agreement with Kevin Cheveldayoff to keep coming back here as long as Kevin Cheveldayoff wants him here, and Paul Stastny has basically said, I want to keep coming back as long as you want to keep shaking hands.
Yeah, and I didn't think of it that way, but you're right. I mean, why don't you come on down? But I'm getting the hell out of here.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Come on.
Like, first it's Willie Jefferson, come on down to Winnipeg, but peace out. I'm going to a real contender. See you later. I hope you enjoy your life. Right? Yeah. So, and then moving on. So then the next part is interesting, right? I mean, because we're in the immediate reaction society. So, I mean, let's be honest. We thought that Andrew Kopp would yield the largest return. He did yield the largest return, but it didn't really lead to a player that is immediately going to help the Jets in the middle six. But the Jets got more third line, let's just say third line. And this is not an insult to Mason Appleton. He may move up in the lineup, but he's more of a third line player. Same with Zach Sanford. So the Jets didn't really get someone who can play up in the lineup like Kopp has in the past, including this season. However, Mr. Barron, Morgan Barron, is a guy who has a lot of Kopp-like qualities. I did a lot of research on him today. A lot of people really like his game. He's a guy who's played some NHL games, late bloomer, really smart, went to Cornell, so we know he's got the hockey sense, really good two-way player. He's got some good hands. I mean, he's going to continue to move and work on his feet. But, I mean, look at Adam Lowry, how much he's worked in his skating over his career. Big, strong guy, 6'4", good two-way player. So the problem is we're not going to see how the two second-round picks, or one of which could become a first if Igor Shesterkin gets hot, continues his Hart Trophy type of season, and gets them to the conference final, and all of a sudden that becomes the 30th overall pick rather than the 55th overall pick. Now that's a big difference. So how did the Jets and their Stouts do? Yesterday, I think on our head, I called it a ground rule double. It's not a home run. It's not a strikeout. It's at least a single, and there's a chance it bounced. If this ball bounced on the warning track, it either went over the wall or hit the top of the wall. So it's for surely a single, and I'm willing to say it went as far as going to a double, because they helped their long-term future. They got back to 7 draft picks instead of starting the day with 5. They still could get a first-rounder. But at the same time, they also lost one of their top prospects in Nathan Smith, who now it sounded like he wasn't going to sign here, which kind of caught the Jets by surprise. So it hurts the Jets also. So you have to kind of weigh all of those things and then see what happens. Again, I would say it's a B- that can become a solid B, depending on the other guys. But it certainly was interesting. I mean, we were working the phones all day, and We wondered, I mean, at one point, you get to the stage where does the leverage shift, Sean, right? Kevin Cheveldayoff starting to stay patient. We knew early in the day there were 2 second-rounders on the table for Andrew Copp. So they got more than they thought. They got the 2 seconds plus Morgan Barron. So I think it was a smart play. But now the biggest thing, too, we talk about defense. Now the defense logjam needs to be solved in the summertime, and that's what we expect will be happening. What was your grade?
Okay, so the Nathan Smith, I was surprised there wasn't more hand wringing losing him. Especially what he's doing. He's on his way to being a Hobie Baker. Well, I mean, I think he's a Hobie Baker finalist. Could potentially win that. Here's a guy who was an Olympian, picked for Team USA. We've talked about him on this show before. A really interesting cat who started out, I believe he's from Tampa Bay, and started out as a roller hockey player. Seemed like a really, really interesting guy. So I was surprised there wasn't more hand-wringing at the loss of him, but there was a really good, and I talked about this with Huss on his show, there was a really good interview with Billy Guerin, who they lost Andrew McBain's son in a similar fashion, and he went to Arizona as well. And he'd said, he was asked how hard it was to lose that player, and his response was, well, once the player says he doesn't want to be here, it's not hard at all. Like, you take all the emotion of it, and now you've got this asset, and you have to get something back for it. So if we take that and run that through the Jets' lens, you get this player who was never going to be a Winnipeg Jet, who would he have been open for free agency at the end of this season? Is that how it worked, Ken?
Well, not even that. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned a 30-day, right? I mean, he didn't have to wait to August 15th because of his age. I think he could have actually, as soon as the college season was over, there was like a 30-day thing where he could turn it over quicker than having to wait till August. So I guess, conceivably, if they got knocked out of the tournament, you could wait the 30 days and sign. I don't know if there would have been enough time for the end of this season, but regardless, it was, like you said, it was something where I was surprised too. I thought that Nathan Smith would move to right wing with the Jets. I mean, we know they have depth down the middle, but
put it this way, that they were, potentially a very short time away from losing this player entirely for nothing. So never mind the fact that don't spend time lamenting the idea that this player was a really good player and you were thinking he was going to fit really well on a line with this player or that player. The way that the collective bargaining agreement works with NCAA players is he's got this right, and he was about to leave. It's the same as Andrew Copp leaving as an unrestricted free agent. You got to do something about it. So I thought for a player whose time with the team was quickly running out, I mean, you're looking at the hourglass, and there's not a lot of sand left, and it's moving pretty fast. You needed to do something with it. So for him to move Andrew Little's contract and get them out of LTIR hell going forward, this is a huge move. I mean, this isn't, sending a guy away and getting a 7th round pick back, something that's never. Kevin Cheveldayoff got something entirely real out of this that is going to be extremely helpful for the Jets going forward. This turns things around for them in their ability to get players at the trade deadline going forward for years to come, for the next 2 years. This is absolutely huge. So yes, Nathan Smith is playing here. Yes, Nathan Smith could go on and be a star in this league. He could go out and be a sniper, and we may look back and be like, man, that was a Jets prospect, and it sucks we lost that. Listen, you were going to lose him for nothing in the end. So to turn that into something that is as valuable and helpful as getting them out of LTIR hell, and we're not going to get into the explanation of that. Just know this, that the ability for the Jets to accumulate money during injuries going forward, and injuries are going to happen, and then use that pot of money as it grows and grows and grows to go out and get high-priced talent at the trade deadline. They haven't had that the last couple of years. They've got that going forward now, unless they do something and go put themselves in LTIR hell again, which they're probably not going to do. This was a huge move by Kevin Cheveldayoff. This is extremely smart. He took an asset, thought outside the box, and turned it into something else entirely. That's a huge move. Absolutely love it. As for Andrew Copp getting a potential first-round pick, a second-round pick, a later-round pick, and a prospect, I mean, take a look at what they turned a fourth-round pick in Andrew Copp into. This is what you walk away from this is you take a look and you say, if we draft our players and if we draft well and if we develop well, this is what we turn things into. The Jets, if you want to take a long look at it, again, Andrew Kopp was not going to be staying at the end of the year. The Jets turned a 4th-round pick into a potential first, but most definitely 2 seconds. Is it a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round? It's a 6th-round pick later on.
They got the 5th and traded the 6th.
And traded away a 7th, so they lose a little bit. But
they got the 5th and traded the 6th.
Sorry. But this is phenomenal asset management. If you take a look at what they turned a 4th-round pick into, they turned it into a whole bunch of years of a great player and then into this. And the one thing that I took away from that, Ken, is Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to be busy at the trade deadline because assets are moving. The wheels are greased. Things are happening, right? The Winnipeg Jets don't do their business in free agency. We saw that this last year. We all thought Kevin Cheveldayoff won free agency without signing a free agent in the way that he was able to pick up Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. But the Jets just can't count on throwing a contract out there to a player and a player saying, yes, I'm going to forego every other team in the market and I'm going to come to Winnipeg. They need assets to bring players in. And I thought Kevin Cheveldayoff tipped his cap to that when he talked about that and acquiring these assets. It didn't necessarily sound to me like they were keen on grabbing these assets and turning around and drafting players. I mean, they will if it comes down to that. But what I heard from Kevin Cheveldayoff is the assets that they picked up with Andrew Kopp are loading up the cupboards to use to go get the players they want going forward. So if they now have cleared space and have taken themselves out of LTIR hell and can work the cap, they go back to doing what they seem to have done best the last couple of years. Who are their big additions? A couple of years ago, it was Paul Stastny. How did they get him? They went to a team that was hurting up against the cap, had cap space as you give us that guy for nothing or a little bit of a draft pick and send them our way. And now we've got Paul Stastny, who's been a valuable player for this franchise for the last 2 seasons. That's the exact same thing that they did with Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. You guys are Vancouver. You were tough up against the cap. Washington, you're tough up against the cap. Send those guys our way. We've got space. These are the little picks that we're going to send back towards you. I mean, what was it? 2 picks? 2 second-round picks that they had to send for Dillon?
Yes.
That's what it was. Well, they got those 2 picks back. So now if they want to go and try and make a move similar to what they did with Brendan Dillon, they've got picks to do it. I think that this was... Now, if we go back to before the draft, Ken, and the conversations that we had, Kevin Cheveldayoff's perfect day was that he was going to make some of these moves, but he was going to make the Jets just as good as they were before the trade deadline, before that game against Chicago, and they were going to be even better, and they weren't going to have to worry about losing a UFA at the end of the year, which they had to with Andrew Kopp. I don't think that they achieved that. Now, we talked about this, and Julie Sue's all over me. I said, I need to see more from this line to see where they can get. Clearly, they want this line to go back to being, and I've talked about it before, the hammer that they bludgeon other teams with. That's what they want them to be. But if you take a look, and the Chicago game is the perfect example of that, of what Andrew Kopp was capable of. Take Andrew Kopp and put him as the center on the third line, and look what he did to elevate Jensen Harkins in that game. I don't see anyone that came back in that deal that is capable of doing those kind of things that Andrew Kopp did. So if I'm taking a look at this right now, do I think the Winnipeg Jets are a better team, a better roster right now than they were going into that game against Chicago? I don't think that's the case. The loss of Andrew Kopp was not spelled off, with what they brought back in. But I said what he was trying to pull off, if he's trying to pull off sending out Andrew Kopp and being just as good, if not better, I'd said if it was that easy, general managers would be doing it every year. The Jets did not pull that off, but given the circumstances, I give Chevy's. Listen, I don't think an A+ was possible. That's what I've been saying heading into this show, but it's an A- day for me. Chevy did a tidy bit of work, gave this team a chance to do something this year, even though, again, Dallas won tonight. The odds still remain very far that the Jets are going to make the playoffs, but he's given them a roster to try and challenge for it. He set them up for the future. He's taken away cap issues. That was an not even A-. That's an A day for what he did. The only thing he could have done better was bring in a guy who entirely spelled off Andrew Kopp. Everything else to me was an absolute home run.
Yeah, I was a hard marker. It's for surely a B, and it's probably a B plus, but with the chance to be an A, depending on how those things. Yeah, you can give them an A. I'll be a tougher marker. I mean, I started at a B minus, and now that I've thought about it a little bit more, and you talk some sense into me as usual, it's for surely a B, and it could become an A depending on how those situations unfold, as we said with the prospects. But what about this? I mean, here's the other part. I mean, I've told you this from the beginning, and including on our hits. They would need two players to replace Andrew Kopp. Right. So if you're looking at the two players, the point production is almost even. So, I mean, no, they didn't get a higher impact guy, but they got two kind of more solid-ish guys that can give you something. And they changed the dynamic, right? So Sanford's more physical. Appleton probably has a bit more speed. None of them are all natural finishers, but they're all going to be kind of double-digit kind of goal scorers. And the familiarity with Appleton makes a big difference as well. So, and I should have mentioned, I mean, Brian Little had to agree to waive his no movement clause. I mean, the Jets are going to have a ceremony for Brian Little, whether he wants one or not. We know he was reluctant to speak with the media when he was in here, but both of us had a chance to say hello to him. He's doing very well. Not surprising that someone who gave so much to the organization had one last unselfish act to help the Winnipeg Jets get out of LTIR jail. That's the kind of guy he was throughout his entire career, and it should not surprise anyone. But you're right. I mean, it will be a very interesting thing to monitor, how they will use that cap space. And to me, the one other thing that I think is worth mentioning, and it's not a guarantee, I mean, the Jets have been a cap ceiling team for a long time. Will they continue to be one based on the economic circumstances they've had to deal with? I mean, that's something we're going to find out in the offseason. Kopp will definitely be missed as well after handing out farewells. Andrew Kopp is one of the most insightful and articulate players to play with the Winnipeg Jets. 7 seasons with the Jets. This guy was available all the time. I love that Andrew Kopp was so honest. It didn't matter if it was the most difficult thing a guy went through, which is going through arbitration. It didn't matter if he was talking about injuries, his concussion history, being a healthy scratch in the playoffs, scoring 4 goals. This guy gave you everything that he had on and off the ice. One of the good people. I think the Jets are going to end up regretting not signing him to that long-term deal for a guy who wanted to be here. But in terms of, did they have to move him? Of course they had to move him, because he brought back a big haul and gave the Jets a couple other lottery tickets after giving them 7 great seasons.
I'm going to say one last thing before we shut it down, because not only is the vacuum going, but the helicopter's coming back out. They're really giving us a run for our money here tonight. I thought it was, how do I want to describe it? I thought Blake Wheeler did a really good job when asked about Brian Little and him moving on from the team this morning. These are the kind of the little things that you don't think a lot about. I mean, I think that the Rangers have done a real good job of kind of showing off, how happy Jacob Trouba is to have Andrew Kopp, a guy who he's been friends with since they were like young kids, under 10 years old. Having those guys back together, that's the human aspect of the game that you don't think that much about, like the stats and what he does and what he brings to the dressing room. You don't hear about that kind of stuff as much. I thought Blake Wheeler's was really interesting because the way that he talked about it, and he talked about not only their wives being best friends, about them coming up together, with the Atlanta Thrashers and then the Winnipeg Jets, but the idea that Blake Wheeler had thought about when he signed long-term with the Winnipeg Jets this last deal. Of course, Brian Little had signed his long-term deal the year before that, right? And the idea that these guys who are friends and care about each other behind the scenes, they plan, and he talked about it. He talked about, what's happened here, and that this is a guy that he had planned his future together with, right? These are guys who looked at each other and said, when they were, having their negotiations, I can see them talking on the phone or talking in person or whatever, and talking about their future together. And you're going to sign this. I'm going to sign this. We're going to be here. Our kids are going to do this. Our wives are going to do this. It kind of really hit home. And I thought Blake Wheeler did a good job of allowing that peek inside to see how hard this situation with Brian Little had been on a guy who's not only friends with him and cares about him, but had really seen his future, with him, and have that future kind of shattered and ripped apart the way that this happened. I got the feeling of that. And, people, we've talked about it on the show, and people in the chat room love to talk about Blake or, cantankerous Blake or whatever. He's definitely given us that side of him more often than almost anything else. But those little peaks of humanity behind the scenes, we got one of those today, and I thought it did a good job of showing just how much Brian Little meant to this organization. Ken, do you have any last thoughts before we go?
No, interesting times. Pierre-Luc Dubois said it on Sunday. The Jets need to go 15-5. So far, they are 2-0. Things are going to get more difficult, but what we talked about this before. With Vegas falling below the line, the Jets are in a stretch. They have 4 more games in this 6-game block against non-playoff teams. They basically need to run the table. Maybe not run the table. They need points in all of those games because their end-of-season schedule is very difficult. Can they do it? Well, they need to play a lot better than they did today, but they found a way to get it done. So
I was going to say, as long as they don't, and I've said this in the past, and I think tonight's another example of it. I've said this in the past. The Jets, they fall for their own hype. And to me, tonight's game is an example of them falling for their own hype. They went in and they played against Chicago, and Chicago wasn't playing very well, and they ran up the score on them. They blew the lead, pulled it out in the end, and I'm always worried about this Jets team because I think they fall for their own hype and they think, we can pull anything off. Tonight, to me, was another example of them continuing on in that track. And so to your point, they don't have, Pierre-Luc Dubois said it, they don't have an opportunity to take a night off. They need to go 13-5. That's going to be hard to do. They can't be giving away a game against Ottawa on Thursday because they show up with an effort like that. And Conor Hillebuck doesn't have that same kind of performance where he puts up the brick wall. They cannot be doing that. They need to start playing the kind of hockey that they would play in the playoffs. Tonight, that was not it. But what you saw from Conor Hillebuck was exactly that. Before we do go, we want to thank everyone for everything here tonight. And we want to bring up our merchandise as we always do at the end of the show. I thought T. Will had a great idea, Ken, where he was talking about getting K&R shirts with a spot there. That if we could somehow put people's internet chat room handles on their shirts, so not only did they have a K&R shirt, which would identify you as a K&R fan, but exactly who you are, so people could go to the game and be like, oh, hey, T. Will, hey, Julie Sue, that would be phenomenal. I would love that. I do know that, Ken, I took 2 of our shirts and I dropped them off for Richard Medeiros at his restaurant NOLA today, the Sean's Headband t-shirt, and of course the Wake Up t-shirt, which the logo was designed by Richard Medeiros, which I wanted to drop those off. I just love the fact that we've met a couple of the people that we see in the chat room all the time. It's great to see them. If you're wearing K&R gear or drinking out of a K&R cup or water bottle, it'll be I guarantee you, if I see you on the street wearing the gear, I'm coming up and I'm talking to you. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to be up in your grill. If you want that scenario to unfold out in the streets, best way to do that is go to www.shopsportsnet.store. That's where you can pick up all our merch. It means a ton to us, the support that we get from all of you. Thank you so much. The chat room was fire today. What do you got to say, Ken, before we go?
Sorry, who's got the pipes Thursday? I thought for sure it'd be Comrie, but now this shutout by Hellebuyck. Does it throw a wrench in the plans? I thought all along it would be Hellebuyck against Columbus. Does tonight change the plan?
Well, yeah, you got to wonder. I wonder how the Jets
He was so good today.
He was, but I wonder how the Jets are thinking about that game with Patrick Laine coming back into town. With Patrick Laine playing the way that he's playing, a motivated Patrick Laine is a dangerous Patrick Laine, and he seems to be motivated. He's been putting up the points. He's been one of the best offensive players in the league basically since the calendar turn. He's got the potential. We've seen him do it before with the Winnipeg Jets to go out and single-handedly win a game. You do not want him to have a performance like that, and your best defense against that is probably having Conor Hillebuck in net, wanting to do to him what he did tonight to the Vegas Golden Knights. So I would say maybe they'll go back-to-back with Hellebuyck. I would say they shouldn't, as good as he was tonight. Just because he's doing well doesn't mean I think you ride him like crazy down the stretch. I would go with Comrie in the next game, and I would go with Hellebuyck in the net in the return of Patrick Laine. What would you do?
I think it's back-to-back for Hellebuyck, and you play Comrie Sunday against the Coyotes. You have a break after that until the Wednesday game against Buffalo, the Wednesday-Thursday. Again, okay. I don't know for sure. but I think the Jets are in, like we said, it's the most dangerous time. And they got to win all of them. I mean, Comrie played great against Arizona. Again, it's also possible that Comrie just plays Thursday and Hellebuyck goes Friday, Sunday as well. But Hellebuyck was so good, I'd be tempted to play him Thursday.
Okay. All right. There you go. And it's I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Anyways, time to shut it down. We really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for all you do. Like I said, the chat room was absolutely on fire today. We got to bring wrestling references in more often. That seems to get people super.
Oh, hey, quick one. Sorry. Jeff Kabilas was waiting for this like an hour ago. When he mentioned throw the salt, he was waiting for the Mr. Saito reference. And there it is for you, Jeff. There it is.
Awesome stuff. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate your time. We are going to have a long-form show on Thursday before the post-game show. Ken, filling in on who's there?
Yeah, Megan Mickelson will join us out of the gate, and then we got an interesting setup also where we're going to really dig into the NHL trade deadline and what it's like to be on the inside. Just give me one more second here, and you will hit it.
This is a great reference. Macho Man Renny Savage and Kenny the Dragon Weepo, which was, I mean, geez,
that was
to me, that was top 3 best rivalries in the 80s. Man, oh man, those guys.
Sorry, I want to be the Macho Man though. Sorry, buddy. You can be Ricky the Dragon.
Too bad. See, we'll put the names out and they make sense. I love it.
Sorry.
Whatever, we both.
Jason Bakula will join us, former assistant general manager. I think he's going to give us some incredible insight. He was part of the trade deadline show on Sportsnet yesterday, and look forward to kind of digging in to what it's like to be in those kind of rooms and having to make those kind of decisions on players like Andrew Kopp and even Paul Stastny.
Happy birthday, Jeff Kabilas. And that's it. This has been the longest goodbye, so I'm ending it now while I can before you have something else to say. Thank you so much, chat room. You were phenomenal. Thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on Thursday. Have a good